This is breaking analysis on the Sydney mortgage market. Cotality confirms a new servicing cost for housing loans in this city, 68% of pre-tax household income. The national benchmark for mortgage stress is 30%. Sydney is now more than double that threshold. So how is anyone earning a normal salary still meant to buy a home here? If you're trying to buy in Sydney, this one's for you. Stick around.
Welcome to Sydney Housing Collapse.
Here's what nobody is telling you about the 68% figure. It is not a forecast. It is not a worst case. It is the current cost of servicing a new Sydney home loan, sitting in a report that almost nobody outside the banking sector has read. 3 things we are going to walk through tonight. 1. What 68% of your pre-tax income actually buys you, and what it takes away. 2. The slow collapse of the first home buyer in this city, told through the people who are still trying. And 3. The structural machine behind the number, the part the headlines refuse to name. We are going to compare Sydney against Melbourne, against Brisbane, against Auckland. We are going to look at the best, the realistic, and the worst case from here. And we are going to end with a verdict that no agent in this city will give you for free. But before any of that, one statistic, because this is the one that should have stopped the country. In 2019, mortgage repayments on a median Sydney house consumed 47.8% of the average 2-person household income. Today, that figure is 72%. 72%. According to Domain and Murray Property, in January 2026, a couple buying a median-price Sydney house with a 20% deposit will hand over 72% of their combined income to the bank every month for 30 years. Read that again, slowly. 7 years ago, that number was 47.8%. In 7 years, it has risen by 24 percentage points. 24. That is not a market cycle. That is a structural break. Let us translate it into a kitchen table. A couple on a combined $180,000 income before tax brings home roughly $11,500 a month. 72% of that goes to the mortgage. That leaves about $3,200 for everything else. Groceries, power, childcare, petrol, insurance, school fees, the car that breaks down, the tooth that breaks, the week one of you is sick. In Marrickville, there is a primary school teacher called Hannah. She is 31. Her partner is a paramedic. Combined income, $182,000. They have a 4-year-old. They saved for 9 years to get a 20% deposit on a small semi-detached house. They settled in late 2024. By February 2026, after the RBA's surprise hike, their repayment had climbed by another $412 a month. Her words to a friend, repeated in a community group post we will not name. We did everything right. We waited. We saved. We did not buy off the plan. And we are still drowning. That is what 72% looks like, in one suburb, in one kitchen, in one family. Now ask yourself a simple question. If a teacher and a paramedic, both essential workers, both well above the median wage, cannot make a Sydney mortgage work, who exactly is this market built for? Section 1. The 68% number and what the banks already know. Cotality's 2026 estimate is that servicing a new housing loan in Sydney requires approximately 68% of pre-tax household income. The national figure is 45.9%. The long-run national average is 34.3%. The benchmark for housing stress, set by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, is 30%. Sydney is now more than double the stress threshold. The country is nearly 12 percentage points above its own long-run average. This is not a hot market. This is a market operating outside its own historical limits. In plain language, for every dollar a new Sydney borrower earns before tax, 68 cents is already spoken for by the bank. The remaining 32 cents has to absorb income tax, the Medicare levy, superannuation, and then the entire rest of life. In Parramatta, there is a software engineer called Daniel, 33, single income, $140,000. He bought a one-bedroom unit in 2023 with a 5% deposit through the federal scheme. He told a mortgage broker on a recorded podcast, "I do not own this apartment. The bank rents it to me, and they keep raising the rent." That is the line. The bank rents it to you, and they keep raising the rent. Now, the counter-argument, presented fairly. The industry will tell you that the 68% figure overstates reality because most buyers do not purchase at the median. They buy entry-level. They use the first home guarantee. They pool with parents. They split costs with a partner. All of that is true, and the data dismantles it. Domain's February 2025 First Home Buyers Report shows that even for an entry-level Sydney house priced at $990,000 or less, first home buyers spend 57.6% of their combined income on mortgage repayments. For an entry-level unit, 35.8%. Both are above the 30% stress threshold. There is no entry point in this city that sits below the line. It is not the median. It is not the postcode. It is the entire ladder. Section 2. The first home buyer, slowly being deleted. KPMG's December 2025 analysis is the one almost nobody quoted. A first home buyer household earning $180,000 combined well above the NSW average can today afford to buy 5% of all housing stock in the state. 5%. In 2019 to 2020, that same income unlocked 30% of the market. In 6 years, 25 percentage points of the housing market has been quietly removed from the reach of people on a good salary. ANZ and CoreLogic put numbers on the weight. It now takes 15.7 years for a first home buyer in Sydney to save a 20% deposit on a median house. Nationally, 10 years. The expanded 5% deposit scheme can compress that wait to about 3 years, but the trade is brutal: a much larger mortgage, a much higher repayment, and lender's mortgage insurance baked into the loan. In Blacktown, there is a registered nurse called Priya, 29. She works 2 jobs, combined household income with her partner, $160,000. She told a housing forum in late 2025, "Every year we save more, and every year the deposit gets further away. We are running on a treadmill that someone keeps speeding up. The treadmill is the point. Wages rise. Prices rise faster. The gap widens. The deposit retreats." Counter-argument. Defenders of the current settings will say, first home buyer numbers are still being recorded. People are still buying. The market still functions. That is technically correct. The data dismantles it. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare and the ANU's Centre for Social Policy Research confirmed that in 2024 to 2025, 44.5% of all mortgaged Australian households spent more than 30% of their disposable income on housing costs. The highest proportion ever recorded. People are still buying. They are buying themselves into stress. It is not access. It is not aspiration. It is exposure. Section 3. The structural machine. The part the headlines refuse to name. Cotality's 2026 analysis identifies 3 structural drivers behind Sydney's collapse in affordability. 1. Chronic undersupply. Australia is on track to miss its Housing Accord target by 262,000 homes. 2. Net overseas migration above 300,000 people per year. 3. 2 decades of property price growth that has comprehensively outpaced wage growth. In Sydney specifically, only 10% of median income households can afford the median dwelling. 90% of median income earners are locked out of the median home in their own city. The RBA's February 2026 decision to hike the cash rate to 3.85%, the first hike since November 2023, has added several $100s a month to new mortgage repayments. Markets are pricing in up to 3 more hikes this year. Each one is another layer added to the 68%. CoreLogic and ABS data through money.com.au show the average Australian monthly home loan repayment now sits at $4,180, up $245 in a single quarter. Average loan size, $694,000. Average variable rate, 5.5%. In Sydney, all of those numbers are higher. In Hurstville, there is a small business owner called Mark, 42. Mortgage taken in 2021 at a fixed rate of 1.95%. Refixed in 2024 at 6.1%. He told a local newspaper, "My repayment did not double. It tripled. And nothing else in my life tripled to match it." 3 quick things to remember before we move. This is market analysis only, not financial advice. Always speak to a qualified professional before making any property decisions. The Westpac Melbourne Institute survey, March 2026, showed the time to buy a dwelling index falling to 82.9. The long-run average is 120. The deterioration was sharpest among households that already have a mortgage. Translation: the people inside the system are the ones losing confidence in it fastest. Counter-argument. Industry voices argue that supply will eventually catch up. New apartment approvals, infill targets, planning reform, patience. The data dismantles it. The National Housing Supply and Affordability Council's 2026 State of the Housing System report confirms home ownership among young Australians has fallen from 61% in 1981 to an estimated 40% in 2026. 21 percentage points of generational ownership gone. The time to save a deposit nationally is now 11.2 years. Patience is what this market has been asking for 45 years. Patience is how we got here. It is not the migrants. It is not the rates. It is the rigging. Now, widen the lens. Moody's, in March 2026, measured housing affordability across Australian capitals using a single metric, the share of average monthly household disposable income allocated to mortgage repayments. Sydney came in worst at 40.4%, Brisbane at 31.7%, Adelaide at 28%, Perth at 25.4%, Melbourne at 23.9%. Read that order again. Sydney is 40.4, Melbourne is 23.9. Same country, same central bank, same tax code. Sydney is consuming nearly 17 percentage points more of household disposable income than Melbourne to service the same kind of debt. A young couple on the same combined income, earning the same wages, doing the same jobs, would, in Melbourne, hand over roughly a quarter of their take-home pay to the bank. In Sydney, 2/5. In Sydney, they would be in formal mortgage stress. In Melbourne, they would be a textbook prudent borrower. Go offshore. The Demographia International Housing Affordability Survey consistently ranks Sydney among the 3 least affordable major cities in the English-speaking world, alongside Hong Kong and Vancouver. Auckland sits close behind. In Auckland, the median multiple house price divided by median household income has hovered around 9 to 10 in recent years. In Sydney, the same multiple sits above 13. Above 13. A worker in Auckland earning the local median needs about 10 years of total pre-tax income to buy the local median home. A worker in Sydney needs more than 13. Same language, same legal system, same housing model, different planet. And yet, the comparison is not consolation. Because every one of these cities is failing the same generation in different accents. The pattern is global. The intensity in Sydney is uniquely extreme. In Sydney, the median household has been priced out of the median home in its own city. That is not a market. That is an eviction. 3 scenarios from here. Best case. The RBA halts at 3.85%. Net migration moderates to around 220,000 per year. State and federal supply targets are partially met, perhaps 80% of the Housing Accord goal. In this scenario, Sydney's mortgage-to-income ratio stabilizes in the high 50s through 2027. It does not fall, it stops climbing. Prices flatline in real terms. The market becomes survivable for those already in it, and remains closed to those who are not. Best case is not relief. Best case is the freeze. Realistic case. The RBA delivers 1 to 2 more hikes in 2026, taking the cash rate toward 4.35%. Net migration stays above 280,000. The housing accord misses by the projected 262,000 homes. In this scenario, Sydney's servicing cost on new loans pushes through 70% of pre-tax income for the median buyer. Repayment stress spreads from 44.5% of mortgaged households toward the high 40s. First home buyer share of the market stays near record lows. Asking prices hold up, supported by equity-rich upgraders and investors, while transaction volume falls. The market does not crash, it calcifies. People do not lose their homes in waves. They lose their futures in silence. Worst case. Market's price in the 3 further hikes already on the curve. Unemployment ticks up from its current base. A weaker quarter forces forced sales among recent 5% deposit buyers who entered at the peak. Investor sentiment turns. Westpac's time to buy index falls below 75. In this scenario, Sydney sees a sharp correction in outer growth corridors of 15 to 20%, while inner suburbs hold. 68% does not stay at 68. It climbs to 75 for new buyers, and the entire idea of a first home in Sydney quietly disappears from the conversation. Best case is the freeze. Realistic case is the trap. Worst case is the wipe. 4 groups. 4 different positions in this market. Listen to the one that is yours. If you are a current mortgage holder in Sydney, your real exposure is not the headline rate, it is the gap between your current repayment and what a further 3 hikes would do to it. Run that number this week. Cotality's average loan of $694,000 adds roughly $130 per month for every 25 basis point hike. Map that against your budget before the market does it for you. If you are a first home buyer, understand that the 5% deposit scheme that promises to cut your wait from 15.7 years to 3 years is the same scheme that locks you into the largest loan, the highest repayment, and the lowest equity buffer. KPMG's 5% of accessible stock is the ceiling. Buy the entry-level unit, not the entry-level house. The 35.8% ratio is survivable. The 57.6% ratio is not. If you are a renter in Sydney, the 72% figure is the reason your rent is not falling. Landlords are passing servicing costs through. Negotiate at lease renewal using the domain figure. Public data is leverage. If you are an investor, the spread between Sydney's 40.4% and Brisbane's 31.7% is no longer a premium, it is a warning. 3 numbers to take with you. 68%. The share of pre-tax household income required to service a new Sydney home loan today, according to Cotality. 15.7 years. The time it now takes a first home buyer in Sydney to save a 20% deposit on a median house, according to ANZ and CoreLogic. 44.5%. The share of mortgaged Australian households spending more than 30% of their disposable income on housing in 2024 to 2025, the highest level ever recorded according to the AIHW. The verdict. Sydney is no longer a housing market. It is a transfer machine from workers to lenders. Subscribe to Sydney Housing Collapse, new analysis every week. No agents, no spin, just the data.